over the past few weeks, there's been a few things that have continued to come up in the spaces that as I go forward in the ways that I want to be an active voice, especially as a woman, that we need to continue to fight and we need to continue to have conversations about and we need to continue to push. Patriarchy is still alive and well. And the truth is that it infects us all. Patriarchy is a system that infects men as well as women. And for more than decades and more, hundreds of years, really. White women have ultimately shut up and become silent because of labels like being hysterical or emotional or crazy or committed to institutions and a number of other things. And then you have our Black sisters who have been labeled the angry Black woman. So anytime a woman expresses a fierce emotion, an impassioned emotion, her anger, her passion, she's shut down. She's told that she's wrong. She's told that she's sinful. There's undercutting messages that essentially put her in a box. My friend and a brother, Steve Wines, he has an amazing podcast called The Good Word, and he posted an audio version of his blog that he had written about for the women who have been called too much. And the truth is, we need to hear from men like him. We need brothers like him in the world. I mean, all of you men who are willing to be feminists, who are willing to stand with white and Black women both, for our voice to be heard, for our anger to be honored, because we are angry. I wrote a poem recently called Beautiful Fuel. Anger isn't always used in terms of violence. Anger can be used as a beautiful fuel to make change in the world. That's what the protests for Black Lives Matter are about. That's what the protests across the globe are about. When you go to Iraq, when you've gone to Lebanon, when you've gone to all these other places, that's what these protests are for. These are protests out of anger saying we need change. We are demanding change right now to the systems that have oppressed us. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. talked about the fact that nobody can be neutral in this fight. You can't be neutral. In fact, if you subscribe to neutrality, you are subscribing and enabling oppression. You are subscribing and enabling the abuse. And we can't do that. In order for us to be able to come to a space where we recognize one another as equal parts within our political systems, within our spiritual systems, within our personal systems, we cannot stay neutral. We must always lift up the oppressed. We must always hold accountable the oppressor, because often the oppressor is not going to hold themselves accountable. They're not, especially if they're deeply narcissistic. So our goal then is to hold them accountable, to make changes among each other, with one another, on the ground floor, on the ground level, to find a place to unite so that we can combat oppression, so that we can overthrow oppression, right? And that is the brilliant part of overturning the tables in the temple, right? Tear this temple down. We have to tear it down to rebuild it. There has to be a death and resurrection. And that's what these protests are about. That's what the women who are rising up and making a statement against the patriarchy is about. We are seeing beyond Black Lives Matter a fresh new pursuit of women attempting to be heard in the earth and stand together and stand in our power and know our power and hold on to our power and embrace it. And so in order to do that, though, we need good men who are humble enough to stand with us, or humble enough to recognize us in our power, and then fight with us, fight together. Because to me, that's the divine masculine and the divine feminine working together. The true divine masculine will humble themselves and join with women in an equal power to fight what is wrong, to fight what is harmful, to fight what is oppression, to fight what is abuse, to fight what is violence that is perpetrated against women, against Black lives, against Palestinian lives, against anybody who is struggling to overcome that. And unfortunately, we have an administration in the United States right now that prefers to perpetuate abuse. And there are those who don't want to believe that that's even possible. because they refuse to actually see it for what it is. And what it is oppression. And what it is perpetration. And so I'm just continuing to pursue my understanding and my embrace of abolition activism. I posted an article yesterday with Angela Davis where she talks about more of that, where she unpacks it, why it's so important. Ultimately, what she's talking about, what abolition activism is it's creating the experience or the navigation, the work of death and resurrection within the space, and that can apply across the board, no matter what you believe, whether you're somebody who subscribes to Christian views or Muslim views or astrological views or or simply atheist views, right? There is no belief system, in my opinion, that is above one another. There really isn't, because the human condition is what wants control of the narrative and power, and they will use any tool. The human conditions will use any tool to justify perpetration, whether it's religion or non-religion. And so we've seen the suppression of women and of Black lives. We've seen it in Christianity. We've seen it in non-religious sectors as well, and we've seen it in waves of thought that are on the far left as far as the far right in the political sectors as well. So I think that we just have to be mindful that the human condition will take anything it can to justify its oppression, and we have to fight against the oppression, not against necessarily the belief system, but rather reshape the belief system into understanding how actually most of these belief systems are things that are meant to defend those who have suffered injustices. So I know I've been a little bit all over the place, but I think that when it comes to the patriarchal systems, which have perpetrated a lot of both racism and sexism, these are areas that we need to continue to fight, and these are areas that I'm continuing to learn and shape how we fight those, how we continue to make our voices loud and clear that it's no longer acceptable to abuse. Thank you for taking time to listen. I hope you guys have an amazing and wonderful Sunday. I am actually wearing a scarf and jacket today because it's quite cool outside. So wherever you are in the world, stay warm, stay cool, and may live and move and have your being.